we're gonna have a quick panel with, let's see, Emmy-winning filmmaker Julie Cohen. One of the stars of the film River Gallo. And producer Tommy Nguyen. Welcome.
Hello. Hello.
Everyone's mic is on, okay?
Yes.
Well, first I just want to thank all of you for bringing this really important conversation to the table and being open and chat about such an important and intimate topic. Yeah, so Julie and Tommy, generally, why was this film a story that y'all wanted to tell?
You know, the intersex activist movement of today is just a fascinating, growing, blossoming, incredible movement that just needs and deserves a lot more attention, coverage, examination, thought, and how could we not?
Yeah, I didn't believe in fate until Julie called me talking about doing a documentary about intersex. I've been trying to do this story for years at NBC, but I'm so glad it's happening now when this really active movement is happening, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, River, thank you so much again for sharing so much of your life with us in the film. What was that like, and has your family seen it? Have your friends seen it? You know, what are the reactions, I guess?
I'm still honestly really processing what this all means. I was telling Julie in the car, just on the ride over here, just how much, you know, you live your life and you don't think you're doing anything that special, and then you reflect back and you're like, whoa, I'm actually like making some fucking moves. And it's really interesting to me that something that I thought was really shameful and that I wasn't gonna speak about for a long time now is gonna be like a theatrically released documentary that is reaching all over the country and the world, and showing a movement that is just on the tipping point of starting a huge revolution in what it means, not just for gender, but like what it means to exist as a human. My mom and my sister have seen it, and my mom says she's never been more proud of me. But that's so sweet. It's like a talk show, like everyone just clapped, right? But at the Tribeca screening, somebody asked, like, you know, what were you most proud of? And I was really proud of my relationship with my mom and how Julie portrayed it. And I shouted her out, and then like she stood up, and everyone clapped for her.
She stood up, and she kind of like spun around a little bit, like.
And the whole crowd went crazy. Everyone was treating her like a celebrity, and yeah, it's really beautiful, especially coming from, you know, a first generation Salvadorian family. You know, my parents immigrated here from El Salvador in the 80s to escape civil war, and just to see that it's not just like my story, but it's the lineage of all of the people that came before me that now is just in this artifact of this film, and my evolution with my gender and also with my ethnicity, like all that all together is like in this film, and I just think that's so beautiful, and I'm really grateful for Julie to give me that opportunity to leave that with the history of my family in this film.
That's beautiful, thank you. Julie and Tommy, how did y'all go about selecting the participants of the film, the stars?
You know, you're always looking for people that are engaging and who have a compelling way of talking about their lives. In the case of this film, because there was gonna be such a disclosure of really personal information, we wanted to be careful to involve people who had actually talked publicly before. Like, we didn't really want anyone having their first conversations about being intersex for our interviews. And also kind of wanted the people in the film to be organically connected to one another. The activists have been activating in a community of activists, so that there would be an actual, we weren't like sort of forcing a connection, but these are people whose activities are already connected. And other than that, it was just kind of finding those cool, stellar people ever, which I think we did.
And then one of the most moving parts for me was the footage of the intersex meetup, and in the park and talking about their experiences. Very beautiful. What was it? How did y'all find that footage, and why was it important to include in the film?
I mean, I'll say how we found it, and maybe Tommy, you can just talk about how you think it fits in. I mean, you know, the internet. Basically, a lot of things in in this day and age, that's how so many intersex activists, frankly, are finding one another. That's what led us to the people in the film, and also to a lot of footage in the film, including that.
Yeah, I've always known that Julie wanted to do sort of a gender reveal opening, but that moment at the very end when Max Beck says, like, hope one day we don't say it's a boy or a girl, it's just a baby, and it's just such a moving part. And you see that opening is a lot of fun, but really, it could be a very traumatic experience for a lot of young kids who are stuck in that sort of like binary. So I just think that's one of the best bookends I've ever seen in a movie ever. So Julie, you're brilliant doing that.
River, how did that footage feel for you to watch? Specifically the meetup in the park and for the first time, because I believe you watched it on camera.
With the hermaphrodites with attitude. That's what they're called. I mean, it's beautiful to see that there's a whole legacy. You know, as Julie has said, you know, the intersex rights movement is like blossoming, but like its origins are but 30 years ago, and you know, that's really young for a human rights movement. And it's, I don't know, on one hand, it makes me so proud of them. On the other hand, I just still can't completely understand why it took up until like the 90s for intersex people to talk to each other for the first time ever in history. Like, that's fucking crazy. And so, I don't know, I just don't take the word revolutionary in vain when I talk about intersex things, because I think anything intersex is really revolutionary, and it is the cutting edge, and it is, you know, what we need to be talking about next and what we will be talking about next. I mean, we're talking about it right now. And I don't know, I get filled with a lot of pride and rage, so, yeah.
I feel that. The film also spent a good amount of time kind of like debunking Dr. Money and his research and practices. And it's interesting, because I actually learned about him from a Law and Order SVU episode. A very problematic one from 2005. But I wondered why that, if you could talk about why you wanted to spend so much time, you know, kind of picking apart his research and legacy that still impacts people today.
Yeah, you know, it's a pretty mind-blowing story in and of itself. Just on the one question of what was done and what happened to David Reimer is mind-blowing, and then when you understand kind of the legacy of that, that was actually kind of the starting off point for this whole film. The existence of that story in the NBC archives, not only the story of Dateline, where Tommy and I actually have both worked as producers at various points in our careers, but looking at the field tapes and hearing parts that weren't in the original story, like David explaining that the reason that he decided to come forward and show his face and tell his story, as painful as that was that he understood that his case was being used as a justification for unnecessary surgeries on intersex people that followed him. He was devastated by that, and hearing in those old tapes, hearing him say that after his death kind of really felt like almost like a reaching out for to undo some of the harm that had sort of been done in his name.
Yeah, and as the film pointed out, these surgeries are still happening today. There's legislation going in that people are fighting for to keep these surgeries happening, specifically on intersex kids, which is wild to think about, you know, the whole political landscape right now with trans people and how, you know, that whole bit that, you know, that trans people being accused of, or the parents of trans kids being accused of putting these surgeries on children when they're happening to intersex people actively. I just wondered if how this kind of, I feel like bubbling up in the last few years, how that impacted the film and how that impacted y'all, if it did, behind the scenes.
Yeah, hopefully with this film, when people will watch it, people will talk about it. Thank God the film's good, so you will talk about it. And you can talk to your parents about it, you know, at dinner and all those good stuff, and then word will spread. Because I do think that sometimes these parents are sort of in a bubble when they're with their doctors in the hospital, you know, in the havoc of the delivery room. Maybe they just don't know this stuff, and so maybe this film will have an impact on that level, just by word of mouth. Yeah.
Something that Alicia talks about a lot, because she is involved in a lot of policymaking and legislative stuff in Austin, is how Republicans know more about intersex stuff than Democrats do, because in all these legislations that they're passing, or they're trying to get passed, the anti-trans legislation, there's all these loopholes that deny gender affirmation, treatment, and surgeries for trans kids, but then the loopholes are such that they still allow those gender, what do I call it? Normalizing, quote unquote, treatment or surgeries on intersex kids. And so the reality is, I think, like, liberal and queer people need to just get behind intersex rights, the intersex rights movement more, because clearly the conservatives know what they're doing in policymaking to try to keep the binary, to maintain the gender binary. So it's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but I think we need to step the fuck up.
Right.
And then I think the film also made a point to end on a joyful note. Why was that important to you?
Yeah, you know, frankly, we wanted to weave joyfulness throughout this whole darn film, and not be steeped only in the hard stuff and the trauma. That actually leads to a shout out that I want to do, although I'm scanning the crowd and not quite seeing, but you know, part of what made the film, part of our intentional joyfulness in this film was the music. Not only the license cues, but also the incredible score by Amanda Yamane. You're high-fiving, so that's while we're shout-outing, I do believe I'm seeing Dr. Casey Orozco-Poor, who you might have seen as the Harvard medical student, now actual doctor, who's been an intersex ally throughout her medical school career. But anyway, joy. Yes, we were into joy throughout. Just because life has challenge and trauma, it doesn't mean there can't be joy woven in. That's the story of the individual lives, and that's kind of part of the human condition. So we wanted to, we want this film to be an experience that people will enjoy. So we went for it, and it just seemed to fit to give a little musical frolicking at the end.
Can I just say though that no one was told this when Julie decided this, and I was the first one up, and I cannot believe what I just saw because I did not look happy. Everyone had a chance to sort of get into the groove. I did not, so I want to do over.
The resistance is what makes it good.
I had reservations too. I mean, I said, I was like, are we supposed to do the frolicking thing? Because I was like, what the fuck? But I think it's the most beautiful credit sequence I've ever seen. I truly, and to what Julie was saying, something that I think about a lot is not just intersex rights as a human rights movement, but like, what does intersex culture look like? And I think culture is based on like the celebration of identity. And I think what Julie's done is not only showcase the broad brushstrokes of a human rights movement, but like the beginning of people starting to celebrate themselves after only being in shame and now finding themselves in light.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So, yeah. So thank you again, all three of you, for the labor that you put into this film, and especially you, River, sharing your story.